We're now at the 1990s. Are you still with me? Good, good. The 1990s was a very turbulent time politically and economically. It was also a time of considerable labor unrest. The Bob Rae NDP government had the great misfortune of overseeing a major recession in the early 90s, and they only had one term in office, and there was job loss, hiring and wage freezes, and funding cuts at that time. Few of us will forget the common sense revolution that came in as the Mike Harris Conservative government swept into power in 1995, and Harris's hard right agenda focused on, as all of you will recall who were working in the field during that era, the reducing the size of government and reining in spending. It was a difficult time for vulnerable and marginalized populations and for anyone working in public services. Examples of social advocacy during that time related to responding to a consultation in the early 90s on a housing framework for Ontario, a written response again to another paper on social welfare reform, and there seemed to be a lot of papers and a lot of talk of reform, but we're still just barely edging forward, having experienced a 22.5 cut in social assistance rates under the Harris government. And with involvement of Frank Turner, we produced a very well-researched paper on workfare, and it was used in our advocacy with government related to some of the draconian approaches that were being focused on social assistance recipients. OASW was one of the few, if perhaps the only professional association that publicly took a stand in the media and with MPPs in favor of same-sex couples gaining access to spousal benefits, which has come about. And in the 1990s, we also developed a policy statement on promoting equity and for lesbians and gays. Mergers and restructuring in healthcare was very, very much a focus and concern of the association. Disciplines, specific departments were dismantled and program management model was put in place. It is still there today. As a result of the concerns about the impact on social work and social workers reporting to managers who were not necessarily social workers, who were often nurses, we were involved in 2 research projects that focused on looking at this program model and what we were beginning to see and having a baseline for what was emerging at that time. Also, in terms of professional advocacy, Social Work Week was launched during 1994 and remains a very important vehicle for promoting the profession across the province of Ontario. The association and the voluntary college formally separated in the early 90s based on political advice that the independence of the college was necessary to fulfill its mandate in protecting the public. And as a consequence, no longer was there a requirement of joint membership. Our name was changed in 1995 to remove the word professional. So we returned again to the early 60s name OASW, and that was to make sure that we were in line with our sister social work associations across the country. We were successful in advocating for the inclusion of social workers in 2 major regulations, one the Healthcare Consent Act and also the Substitute Decisions Act. And this was pivotal because social work was not formally regulated under provincial law at that point. And these were regulations under the Regulated Health Professions Act. And we did so in part because we were fortunate enough to have a social work representative an OASW representative on the ministerial committee that was looking into this. We also, finally, after 2 decades of strong and consistent leadership, we were able to secure passage of the Social Work and Social Service Act, and it was in 2000 that the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers opens its doors. Flash forward to 2000, Ontario's economy is slowing down, and by 2008, because of the global fiscal crisis, there was a dramatic downturn in the economy as well as employment rates really skyrocketing. Ongoing organizational restructuring and funding constraints also became part of our lives, as did the challenges associated with unstable employment, part-time work, privatization of services, increased workloads, and a real erosion in supports for social workers. Importantly, in response to escalating poverty rates, the Ontario government introduced a comprehensive poverty reduction strategy in 2008. During the decade, we continued to focus on poverty reduction and worked with stakeholders in Campaign 2000. A number of OASW's initiatives involved advocacy for more equitable treatment of First Nations children living on reserves, including access to education, as well as efforts related to improving the quality of housing on reserves. Concern about what was happening to the quality of the profession's work life led OASW to conducting an online survey, and I think it was our first online survey, Rita, to collect information about salaries and working conditions across the province. We had a very strong response. This was the survey. We were able to encourage other provinces to replicate the survey. And in 2006, we released the findings to the media. Articles were written and there were presentations at both the provincial and the national conference at that time. A research paper has just been written and is going to be published, I believe, sometime later this year on the common themes in the research across the country. And we are hoping to have a survey that would be replicated again across the province now that we have somewhat of a baseline. OASW hosted the national conference, and Ellen Sue Mesver chaired our committee developing that conference in 2008, and that was co-sponsored with CASW and the Canadian Association of Social Work Educators. A major victory in 2007 was the inclusion of RSWs in the Psychotherapy Act. And this followed a very well-organized, well-orchestrated, province-wide campaign spearheaded by OASW and involved the college and a rallying of the profession. This also led to OASW formalizing our relationship with Policy Concepts, a government relations firm that we continue to work with today. In the last 4 years, Ontario's Liberal minority government has really struggled to rein in a huge deficit and has had difficulty moving forward on a number of very important initiatives, one being poverty reduction and others that are very much on OASW's radar stream are the implementation of the mental health strategy and Ontario's senior strategy. Slow economic growth and cuts in funding precipitated ongoing restructuring, which is just kind of a tired but ubiquitous theme now. Job losses, especially in healthcare, where over 60% of the profession works. Our advocacy has centered around an increased focus on succinctly articulating the role of social workers with key decision makers and influences, and Kate talked about that in terms of framing our contribution related to the social determinants of health and as a cost-saving alternative to very expensive medicalized services. And there's great concern about the growing medicalization of hospitals, and that will be something that we need to be watchful of, particularly over the next year. In 1910, OASW, after lengthy deliberations, suspended membership with 2010? I'm going back. Yeah. Maybe I should start over. I hate to make a mistake. In 2010, OASW, after a period of deliberation, suspended membership in CASW. Accomplishments accomplished during the decade included use of the title doctor, and we were very proud of that accomplishment in that only, I think it's 5 or 6 male-dominated professions are still able to use that title because of the RHPA, and we were able to garner it for social workers with doctorates in social work who are providing clinical services. They always could provide it before, but not if they were providing clinical services. And the inclusion of social work expenses as a tax deduction under the Income Tax Act if services are being provided separately. Also, we have continued to advocate for poverty reduction and an increase in the minimum wage, and that is the fact that we have an election coming up. It's going to be very important for us to be paying attention to what's going to be happening. In closing, the association has much to celebrate on its 50th anniversary. Over the 5 decades, the association has provided strong, visionary leadership for the profession, and thanks to people in the front rows here today and many of you here in the audience. This has resulted in increasing recognition of the profession, as well as inclusion of the profession in important pieces of legislation, regulations, policies, and programs. While positive changes have occurred as the profession and society have evolved, too often fundamental concerns remain the same, and much still needs to be done, and we continue to need your support. In 1994, as in 1962, when the association was founded, there remains a vital need for OASW and a voice for the profession. All of the accomplishments in the past half-century was the product of a myriad of work on the part of numerous association members, staff, and previous boards and committees, and I thank you.